Babysitters of Reddit, was there a time you had to call the police on the parents of the child you babysat? If so, what happened? My mom ran a day home when I was 5 or 6. One of the kids, who was a few years older than me, kept trying to play a game with other kids where they get naked under the covers. He also kept crapping his pants. Like every day. My parents talked to him about it and wound up calling the equivalent of Child Protective Services on the parents. It turned out his mom's new boyfriend was molesting him basically every day. It broke my parents' hearts. I'm not sure what happened to him after that. I hope he's doing okay. Edit. My mom stopped running her day home after that and went into teaching adults. She had a master's in early childhood development but says she couldn't bear to be the caretaker for children anymore. Having to tell that boy's mother what she suspected was happening broke her a little. Yes. She had baby formula next to a meth pipe on the counter. I was young and couldn't get the baby to stop crying, so I called her and she sent some random girl over. The random girl revealed that there was a toddler asleep in the back that I didn't know about. I told my mom and she called CPS and the cops. Turns out the woman had like 2 or 3 more kids that she wasn't allowed to see. When I was young, my babysitter had to call the police twice. Once because my mom, who had limited visits with us 3 kids, came banging on her door to get us and take us who knows where. Babysitter hid us in a closet and called the cops. Second time was when we were playing hide and seek in the apartment courtyard and my brother took hide and seek a little too seriously. He refused to come out from his hiding spot and then some person said they saw him leaving with a strange man. Finally, after the cops showed up, he came out from under some bushes proud that not even the cops could find him. I had to call 911 while I was being babysat by my grandma as a kid because she had a stroke. I recognized the symptoms from the Babysitters Club. Fortunately, she made a full recovery and is still doing fine almost 20 years later. I was babysitting a 5-year-old. I let him download an app and said if your parents say to take it off you have to listen. I went to the bathroom when the parents came home. Once I got out of the bathroom I saw his dad punch him in the stomach about 13 times yelling, "I told you not to download apps." I called the cops. They came. I had the police while babysitting. Parents got into an accident and fled the scene. Police caught up to them in their driveway. The cops came to the door and told me to keep the kids in the back of the house so they wouldn't have to see the lights or the parents getting arrested. I agreed to stay until the grandparents got to the house. Obligatory edit. Thanks for my first awards, kind Reddit strangers. Did you end up getting paid still? Not quite what was asked. But one time a small tornado hit next to our house while the babysitter was at our house. I got a frantic call from the babysitter where she kept repeating, "Your tree is in the driveway." It must have been pretty scary as the tree barely missed the house. We headed home immediately, but it took forever because trees were down all over the neighborhood and all the traffic lights were out. We tipped generously. The toddler was completely unfazed and having a great time playing with flashlights. The toddler was having a great time playing with flashlights. As a mom of 4 little ones, this sentence made me laugh. Super relatable. Years ago I babysat 2 kids. 10 and 7. The 10-year-old was threatening us and threw his little sister out of the house. I followed and he locked us both out. Wisconsin winter. No shoes. It was near home. So I brought the girl to my place. But couldn't leave a crazy kid alone. So I returned and he let me stay with him until parents returned. This was before cell phones. I was paid $1 an hour. Tops. No apology. No sugary sodas. No maraschino cherries in the door of the fridge. Parents were wealthy. A couple years later the boy set fire to himself. I regret not doing more. But honestly, I'll never understand why his parents didn't do more. No, but their neighbors called the police on me. I used to babysit triplets just down the road from a grocery store and the parents asked me to pick some stuff you owe for them. They paid me a little extra for running the errand. Well, one of the neighbors called the police and accused me of kidnapping the kids. Yes, Changing the diaper of a 1-ish year old. Found cigarette burns. It was horrifying. The child, 4, was running around naked and I was trying to clothe him and his sister, 6, said it's funny when he comes naked to the table daddy sticks his pee-pee in his mouth. I asked her to elaborate and her twin sister elbowed her and said we aren't supposed to talk about that. I have something similar. I was allergic to most bubble baths and other soap products. My dad, being a single parent at the time, was accused by my doctor at the time of sexually abusing me. I remember when they had to examine me that they asked who I wanted in the room with me and I bawled since they wouldn't let my dad in the room. I had a regular babysitting job all through high school and into college with a family down the street. My senior year of high school the parents separated and began proceedings on a pretty messy divorce. One day right before Christmas, the mother dropped the kids off at my house and asked that I not spend the day at either my house or their house. Her ex-husband was threatening to take the kids and ship them out to his brother's place in Wyoming, essentially kidnapping them. And she wanted me to hide them while she was at work. Luckily, I didn't end up having to call the cops because we took off and spent the day at a friend's tiny studio apartment. As a preschool teacher, I called CPS once after a little girl showed up to school with a black eye. The mother assured us that the little girl had just fallen down and everything was fine. But that paired with the child telling us that mom's new boyfriend got angry and hit mommy, we decided to play it safe and call it in. Not me, and no police was called. Sorry if this doesn't count. But my family is pretty sure my nanny had drugged me when I was little. I was born with a bad case of eczema that made it near impossible to sleep through the night. Hours of crying on end. It was exhausting for anyone taking care of me. They hired a nanny and whenever that woman took care of me nights were silent. My parents at first hoped it was cause my skin got better but later was suspicious. Reverse story here. When I was around 8 I called the police while being babysat. What was the reason for that, you may ask? Simply because I wanted to see what happens when you call the police. I immediately hung up when the dispatcher answered and no more than 10 minutes later a policeman showed up at our house. Our poor babysitter must have been scared to death. But she handled it well. I did get a lecture after that to only call the police if there's an emergency. When I was a young teen I lived in a poor low-income area and there was a mom that had 2 little boys I babysat while she worked overnights. Initially, I admired the mom for her dedication and hard work. She was doing the best she could and honestly my mom and home life were really bad off. I babysat for her quite a few years. She ended up meeting this loser and got pregnant. He was abusive to her but especially the boys. It was sickening to watch. I ended up leaving the job because we moved but I did call them in. I don't know whatever happened but I often think of those boys and hope they're okay. Not me but my friend. Kid was doing crack in his parents' bedroom. The kid was ducking 14. I met a guy in a mental institution whose mom started doing crack with him at age 11. Not surprising he ended up there. I haven't called the police. But while I was active duty Navy, I had a shipmate who asked me to watch her son briefly. The diaper bag she left me with was filthy and all the bottles had mold in them. I contacted our chief. The Navy helped her. She was super overwhelmed as a dual military couple with 2 kids and a husband on deployment. She thanked me later. My mom does respite for foster kids, so basically babysitting for while the foster parents can't. Anyways, we were watching them. There were 4 girls and 1 boy all under 13. Anyways, they started saying things in random conversation about what their foster parents who were friends of ours would do. The youngest girl, who was 3 at the time, had been molested by her mom's boyfriend and had behavioral issues. No shitty. Anyways, the foster parent would punish this 3-year-old girl by forcing her to sleep on metal poles. And wouldn't feed her. She would also scream in her face. That was only what they did to her. So my mom reported her and it caused a lot of drama. BTW, they now live with their dad who has been rehabilitated. They are doing great. We still babysit them from time to time. I used to work overnights at a 24-hour daycare center. and we had to implement a rule that parents couldn't drop off sleeping kids. We used to allow it because a kid might be asleep when a parent needs to go into work for a swing or third shift. But we had a toddler almost die in our care because he was dropped off sleeping, when in reality, he had been unconscious since earlier that day when his mother shoved him. He fell back and hit his head on the floor. When doing checks on the kids, we noticed the lump gash on his head. And when we couldn't wake him, called the police and ambulance. It was absolutely horrifying. This isn't personal experience, but this was told by my friend. So, we have FM equals friend's mum and C equals child. So FM was a babysitter. She had constantly looked after one kid as their parents had a lot of work to do. One time, the C asked what consent was. And then FM explains it all and everything. And at the end, FM said it's always okay to say no to sex. I think we can see where this is going, but just in case you don't. The child then said even to family? Full stop. No. But I should have done so. I minded a little girl and her dad would come home drunk each night. He was a friend of the family and I wasn't in any fear whatsoever. But it just creeped me out that he was sloshed with an infant for the 2 hours he was home alone until his wife got there. I often would say, "Hey, I'm almost done with my homework. Mind if I stay?" Instead of leaving just because some nights he couldn't stand up. And yes, he was driving this way. It was the early 80s. I had to call the fire department once. I was babysitting my neighbor's 3 kids, which I did frequently. There was a lit candle in the fireplace mantle. The cat jumped on the mantle and over the candle, catching its long, fluffy tail on fire. It's understandable panic. It set a curtain on fire. With 3 screaming kids and a flaming cat as well as burning window dressing, all I could do was rush everybody outside and call 911. The cat returned about a week later, filthy, half bald and with some infection. A vet visit fixed it up and the damage to the house was relatively minor. Thank God. I continued to sit for them for another 3 years. Edit. Caught the lady blowing meth into her 21-month-old daughter's face. I exclaimed, "What the hell are you doing?" And she said she didn't want her to grow up fat. Thank the Lord, no for me having to. Neighbor called the cops on me though cause my son ran outside while I was going poop twice because he learned how to unlock the door. We installed better, higher locks now, but hadn't at the time and it was scary, but I'm kinda grateful they did. Lets me know someone was watching out for him. My sister was babysitting 2 younger kids that lived around the neighborhood. She called my parents in the middle of the night freaking out saying she couldn't find one of the kids. They weren't in their bed. My dad was going to go over there because my sister was frantic. Turns out the kid left his room and buried himself in the giant comforter of the parents' king bed. My sister ended up finding him before my dad even left to go over there. It was definitely tense. Apparently the mother knew the kid would do that and forgot to tell my sister. Needless to say, cops weren't called, but was definitely a stressful situation. My sister never babysit for them again. This is not an answer to your question, but somewhat related. My partner knew a family that hired a teenage girl to babysit their 3 young children. She was exhausted from schoolwork and at some point fell asleep. 2 of the children, 2-3 years old, managed to get outside, and both drowned in a small pond. I don't know what happened to the babysitter or the family afterwards. So sad. Almost once, I was about 14 and watching a girl that was 4 for the first time. Mom had a schedule she wanted me to go by, so at 7:30 I told the girl it was bath time. She didn't agree and went to mom's room and grabbed a small 9mm handgun and pulled it on me. I quickly agreed it was in fact not bath time and she could just watch TV. She gave me the gun and went to watch TV. I called my dad, who was half a mile away, and he came straight over. Gun was loaded with the safety off. All that brat had to do was squeeze just a little. So my dad called her mom and told her she had 15 minutes to get home before he called the cops. She showed up 14 minutes later frazzled but super annoyed that she couldn't go back to work. She didn't give a shit. I never went back. I am a babysitter and used to work at a daycare. The assistant director and I had to call the police once because a child was left behind over an hour after closing time. We were afraid her mom had been in an accident or something. Turns out there was a miscommunication between mom and dad regarding pickup. I really just think the dad forgot about her, as the mom was always the one picking up. It makes me sad to think that her dad forgot her. As sad as it sounds, it's easily done if it's not part of your usual routine and you have a lot going on to think about or are in a rush. 6 kids. $1 per minute to watch them in the 90s should give you an idea of how much of a handful they were. The parents would buy them non-alcoholic beer to drink, 0.5%, to discourage them from drinking the good stuff. At one point the kindergartner was puking light beer and yelling "Duck you Ricky Martin" while another kid was getting the dog to eat the puke. The other two were carving their initials in the pool table while I called the police on the eldest teens who had run to a neighboring field to burn it down. Did not call the police on the alcoholic dad who kept asking me to hook up and then paying me $50 in hush money to keep silent. Poor call on my part. I don't know how you recover from that upbringing and I don't want to ever run into them again to find out. I didn't call anyone, but should have. I was watching a kid who was around 9 who told me his dad let him smoke cigarettes. I thought he was just saying it so that I would let him. I didn't. But when the parents came home the kid told the dad I hadn't let him smoke and the dad scolded me and gave his child a menthol. He smoked full flavors. I suspect he got menthols literally because his 9-year-old liked them better. The mom is in prison now for some kind of fraud and the kids live with their much older brother. I don't know where the dad is. Not a babysitter but I was babysat and my mom babysat a lot. One person that babysat me and a few other kids in the early 90s would just leave the house for a couple of hours, leaving us unsupervised. I remember her son would get knives from the kitchen and try to cut us with them, even going as far as to stab his dog. I don't think the cops or CPS were ever called, but I do remember the kid having a lot of issues as he got older, and was eventually arrested for molesting one of his family members. One family of kids my mom babysat when I was around 13 or so would always come over smelling like kerosene. Turned out their mom would pour it on them when they were bad. CPS did get called and they got taken away. Not sure what happened to them after that. I hope they are okay. I called CPS on my own stepmother and father. Father never did anything. Stepmother was a mental and physical abuser. She threatened to send me to my biological mother's, which is worse than me. I told her to do it. She treated my brothers like gold and forged my signature saying that I lied. When my sister was about 4, my mom was babysitting a friend's granddaughter who was around the same age. One day, my sister came out of her room where the two were playing, really upset. My mom finally calmed her down and learned the other little girl was trying to get my sister to take her panties off and lay down so the other girl could lay on top of her and hump her. With zero prompting. The little girl said it's a game me and my new daddy, mom's new trash boyfriend, play. CPS was immediately called. I was also pretty young so all I remember is she was placed with her grandparents and was in therapy soon after. I was substitute teaching for a while. So basically glorified babysitting. My student assistant for the period was in the shared staff room for the building, which was fine, and decided to make herself some ramen for lunch in the microwave, also fine. The problem was she forgot to put in water and turned on the microwave. She ran into the classroom crying and the smoke was right behind her. I got the kids outside and the fire department was called. That block of ramen was just a burnt husk and the microwave was not salvageable. But no real damage other than that fortunately and no injuries whatsoever. The kids were stoked for class outside. I had to read this title like 3 times. Kinda misspelled the word if. My mom used to be a babysitter and this is one of her stories. So my mom was babysitting a kid no more than 4, so she went to find the kid's toy and she found 2 fetuses in a box, so she called the cops and got them in jail. Turns what, they murdered pregnant. Murdered pregnant what? This ended on a weird cliffhanger. Can you finish this please? Dad and mom came home super drunk. Dad started beating the shit out of mom over $20. She yelled from the back bedroom to call the police, so I did. She came out asking me if I really called the cops. Yeah, I did. I was like 13 at the time. Scared me so bad I couldn't look at the dad the same ever again. Even though they were back together not long after. My GF told me this story. Back in high school, she did babysitting as her job. There was this one kid she babysat who seemed to like her a whole lot more than his parents. The parents had a pretty nice house. With a few small things here and there but nothing too bad. One day, however, the kid says to my GF, let's go upstairs. I want to show you something cool. While they were playing, they go upstairs together. And rather than going to his room, they go into his parents' room. And over to their closet. He opens it and she sees 3 boxes absolutely full of heroin, weed, meth, and a whole bunch of other illegal drugs. My GF closed the closet, took the kid downstairs, and called the cops. The cops arrested the parent and took the child into protective custody. The only thing she knows now is that the parents are still in jail, and the kid is living with his grandmother. We were neighbors. The parents were going out to the bar. The baby sister was 13. Their kids were a few months and 14. The baby got sick and the kids didn't know what to do, so they came to our house for help. We couldn't do anything to help, so we called an ambulance. Baby was fine. Everyone happy. Parents still at the bar. Few hours later, parents come back drunk and find out what happened. The dad kicks down our front door. Goes straight to the master bedroom and kicks that one down when he got hit in the face with 25 pounds. Dumble. Kicking a door down is loud and tends to wake ya up pretty quick. Huge fight breaks out. Holes all over the walls. Blood everywhere. Dad ended up having to get his face surgically repaired. Learn to be grateful when someone helps your baby.